Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has barely watched any object shows. We have to fix that. Now let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catchup, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they're new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, with a handy dandy amount of background noise today, we will be doing the first proper catch-up episode of 2026, and I want to get all of these damn requests that have been around for like 2 weeks gone, because I feel bad, okay, and we are going to be taking a look at all of them. We're going to be wrapping it up, okay. I know there's some new releases, but look, I have it roughly lined up how I want the next couple of episodes to go. Well, also, of course, later on accounting for new releases, but yeah, what we're going to do today is basically just take a look at the requests, however many we can. I have a set that I want to do a minimum of, but we'll see if we can pull off more or less. We'll see. We will be starting off here with a show called Duo, which is the oldest request still on the tank, about over 2 weeks old. Duo is a show created by Object Show Epically, or The What Boom, who's a fellow YouTuber with 327 subscribers. They have made a couple of little object show thingies from time to time. However, their current main project is titled, well, Duo, which started 2 months ago with episode 1 and has currently had 3 episodes, with the third one releasing yesterday, in fact. Let's just watch these videos, let's talk about it, let's do all that stuff, starting with episode 1, Stacking Crates. Alright, that is the first episode of Duo. So as you can see on the screen, we are dealing with an aspect ratio and a half here. So the way that this show is made, I presume it's by roughly following a slideshow format, which a lot of shows are. However, what this ends up doing is, instead of taking the images themselves and putting them in a video editor, no, what we're actually doing is we end up just taking a screen recording of the program, and then we just end up kind of YOLOing it from there, right? We go moment by moment by moment, while voicing it in real time, which ends up unfortunately looking pretty unprofessional. It looks actually extremely unprofessional, right? Not saying that you want to be professional necessarily, it looks kind of amateur-ish, and it's not too convincing, right? Even in the sense where it's like, you could, for example, I don't know, use the video editor to, like, possibly take those still images, and then you can just simply, like, you can do the same screen recording tactic without the zoom-ins, right? And then instead, later in the video editing software, you crop out the interface and just make the middle part, right? For example, if you don't want to take an individual screenshot every time, right? So you can still do everything when recording, you can still switch everything on time, but then you still have to do everything, like, for example, right? Because again, just seeing the entire phone looks a little bit goofy, you know? Especially with the zooming and all that stuff, right? Like, this situation, it's not impossible to do the show in one take when with this slideshow format. It's just the way that it's being done, kind of just like in this raw screen recording YOLO fashion. It's a bit, you know, it looks a bit rough. Like, there's definitely ways to pretty easily make this look better, you know, to hide out the rest of the screen. So, I would recommend, of course, immediately taking efforts to do that. We'll see if the other episodes take efforts to do that. But, we have ourselves a challenge that is to stack crates. Every team has a crate stack. There are 2 teams, I'm not mistaken, it's 2 teams of like 12. I don't even know. There's like a million people. But, there's a team Orderly Chaos and a team Brightside. So there's a strategic team, apparently, and a more chaotic team, apparently. So they end up stacking crates to debatable levels of success. However, unfortunately, the electric gecko destroys the tower that the Brightsides were making because they felt like it. So they are up for elimination. Either way, they would have still lost because the other team stack was 5, while theirs was only 3. So, like, it would not have mattered. However, it is still a detail to point out. We have our cast here. There seems to be quite a lot of general house appliances. You know, we have, like, the emoji for, like, a toolbox, like, you know, a worker's toolkit. We have stuff like I mean, I guess I could just check the list. We have stuff like TV remote, a gas pump. I mean, that's not like allows a light switch. The hose, if I'm not mistaken, is like a ironing thing, right? A beach ball. So we have a lot of things. Ice cube tray, which apparently I don't even think shows up in this episode. Okay, yeah, out of the characters, yeah, a lot of them don't show up, bro. Ruler, trash can, paint. No, paint roll. They show up. Feather pen. Who is Feather pen? You know, we didn't focus a lot on getting the screen time in between the characters. I feel like we maybe made the cast of this show a little bit too large for what we can reasonably muster. But okay then. Numbers is like, and the letters is dislike. Interesting way to do it. I wonder if people will understand how that works. All right. That's all I can really say for episode 1. Let's see how the show evolves itself in episode 2, titled Information Related. Alright, so that is episode 2 of Duo. So we remain with the same system here of taking the slideshow format, and very, very much so just one going it and believing, right? Like, I don't know, it's interesting because like it doesn't need to be like this. I think, like, because you gotta think about it, it's not like we're doing this type of single screen recording to dodge using an editing program, because we're using an editing program anyways. We're using an editing program to go over, right, right, like to add sound effects, and then to go over, for example, like that one flipper clip thing, that the one animated section of it, right, like that same set. Like, we're using an editing program that we're not actually dodging the use of it at all, right, which is what makes me a little bit confused, because it's like, what in the world, right? We could just take some time, try to make it, you know, like, instead of vertical, try to make it a landscape video like every episode, and then it's just gonna overall turn out better, you know? It's just gonna end up cooler. But we're not doing that, right? There's a pretty constant background noise going on. It doesn't sound like a person in the sense, like, it doesn't sound like somebody that's actually there. It sounds like a video. Which, I mean, it's one. I mean, look, personally, I don't know what the situation is. I'm in the ballpark where it's that if I see that there is video, like, I'm immediately like, yo, why don't you pause the YouTube video on the TV? You know, it's like one of those, like, yo, what is going, like, surely, right? Because, like, for example, right, you can probably hear background noise right now during this section, right, because people are on about. However, the thing about it is that's different is that, like, like, a show has, like, what, with a couple of lines of VA, and then you gotta do, like, it's a couple of minutes, right? When I make something like the Catchup, you see, I take, like, flipping, like, these videos are very long. Look at the runtime of this video. It's gonna be very long, right? Which means that, like, overall, I don't have enough time to be able to commit to properly giving out a full system here, of, like, you know, fully, like, non-broken audio. That's why you'll hear random things that wouldn't be perfection, right? Like, when I do VA work, for example, like, I'll make sure that it's all correct. But, like, in this case, I can't, you know, there's too much content. But when you're making a show, it's gotta be like, what, you gotta, what, go in your room for 5 minutes? Like, it's really, it shouldn't be that difficult to get it done, you know? Like, it's... So I absolutely recommend it, you know, but, like, because that extra effort, it doesn't sound like it would help, but it really does, you know. So it's like, I think that's one of the main aspects that I would absolutely recommend, you know, just taking that additional effort to try to go away from noises, making those 5 minutes, and then just coming back, you know, like, it's worth it, in my opinion. It'll make a much better sounding product at the end of it. So our host, the Iron Thing, ends up joining alongside a new co-host, Afghanistan Flag, which is, we end up using the Afghanistan Flag emoji. To reveal the votes, where the eliminated contestants ends up being the electric gecko lizard fella, which makes sense. They did throw the challenge for absolutely no discernible reason. They just felt like it, so that makes sense. We get to see a bunch of the characters that didn't show up in the other episodes here, and it ends up being quite, like, it feels a little bit odd when a character's first appearance is episode 2. You know, that's always kind of weird. But yeah, we had got to see a couple of people. There's some yellow fern fella that for some reason wants to murder people's families or something, which is interesting. We ended up having the challenge. I guess choose somebody to sing a song and then get a song to sing, and then the music rating machine will rate the music. Why have I not talked about this challenge for the past 4 minutes? Well, it's because it doesn't happen. I'm not gonna lie, they spend about the next 2 minutes kind of meandering about who should choose until they eventually end up not finding a song. Like, I don't even know. Like, okay, wait, what even happens? One team ends up choosing coffee mug. Okay. And then they have a song. Wait, do they? And then the other fellas come up with the song. And then they just bicker. They bicker for about 2 minutes, and the host comes in and says, time's up. And they're like, yo, we don't have a song. So then they end up for elimination, and the other team doesn't even have to actually do anything. So much for being strategics. But yeah, everybody else is up for, no, everybody on Team Orderly Chaos is up for elimination except Compass, who's safe for some reason. What did they do? I guess he's the only one that tried. Is he the only one that tried? No, that's not true. Didn't other people try? Wait, or is this the other team? No, wait, this is the other team. Oh, wait, yeah. Wait, what? Okay, I don't think either team is going to have a song. I'm going to be absolutely for real. No way either team is going to have a song, but okay then. A Compass safe, everybody's up for elimination, getting eliminated. I don't know. Paper Airplane, maybe, because they could have bullshitted a song, technically, and they didn't. So, like, by being overly honest, they got out. One of the two. I don't know. Like, it's too impossible. We don't get enough info to really make discernible voting decisions. Episode 3, Animation is Peak. Alright, so that is the third episode of Duo Animation is Peak, and yeah, no, the bulk of my advice remains exactly the same. It's just on a technical level, right? Because, like, doing this screen recording way, in the way that it's done in this episode, is just not very good. Because, like, what ends up happening? So you end up having vertical video with a landscape image every time, right? Which means that it's gonna look small. So what happens when it's small? We end up trying to zoom it in constantly in the recording, right? Okay, so then we try to zoom it in constantly during the recording. The pinches, a lot of the time you can actually hear the pinches, and that like impacts. You see, you can be like a so noises like that, like sorry, I'm gonna tap it, you know, like those types of noises, and you can directly hear those in the actual thing itself, which is annoying, right, because that makes more noise, which is sad. And yeah, again, I just find it unfortunate because it's not what's needed. Like, no, think about it, right? Like, you see how the start goes usually, you know, the start of these record, right, when everything is on it's on the baseline level. You can see the entire frame, and then we go to the next. If we just didn't do any zoom in, no zooming in, just simply the scene, and then the person switched from here, from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, right, then you're gonna have a very small show there in the middle. However, it's gonna be there, and then you can work with it, because then you can add it onto whatever video editor we are using. And then what do we simply do? Crop out the top and the bottom on the consistent middle ground that's always there, and then you make that landscape, which means that now you're going to have the show entirely made, right? It's not going to have any flip clip watermark. It's going to completely work, and it's going to still allow you to do this relatively sort of, it's not one take, but, you know, generally one go type thing, right? It's gonna work. It worked quite well in that system, because, like, the thing about it is that as far as, of course, those flip clip animations goes, it's not bad. I mean, the assets, they're relatively understandable for what the assets are. I mean, there's a few I would criticize. I don't think you can really tell that a character like Sticky Note is a sticky note, right? But, like, or like the glow stick, it's really hard to tell that's a glow stick, but like it looks more like a friggin' knockoff lightsaber with a hook on top. But like in general, it ends up like most of the assets are perfectly suitable, and then a lot of the animation is perfectly suitable, and the narrative is, I mean, it's sometimes, I think it draws itself a little bit out. To be honest, like mildly, I think what it does in 6 minutes, it could probably do in 4, but like it ends up that it's okay, right? I just think that with the additional of like how, for example, the video starts, right, much better. And again, it doesn't need to necessarily be fully animated. It can be the slideshow S format, and it would be pretty solid in my opinion. So yeah, that's absolutely just the main recommendation. If we care about what actually happened in this episode, so we ended up having a couple of chit chatter. A bunch of people die because the sticky note gets lit up by the paint roller for some reason. And then we end up ordering ourselves a recovery center, which is cool. And then we get ourselves the votes, as our eliminated contestant ends up being Pizza Box. Pizza Box, who gets ripped in half and then eliminated. The ripped in half isn't related to the elimination. I guess they just felt like it. So Van doing that, and that's Pizza Box eliminated. So then the challenge now ends up being to be hold on, what was the challenge? Let me 100%. Oh yeah, make an intro. The challenge was to make an intro to the show, each team, and then will they do well? I don't know, we'll have to see it. So we end up having ourselves the challenge. For some reason, the marshmallow stickman fella is not comfortable doing the challenge. What do you mean, you're not comfortable animating? That's not a scandalous thing to do, bro. Okay then. So yeah, both teams in this case do actually manage to get something submitted for the challenge, which is nice, because that's better than the other time. Ruler and tape measure are best friends, apparently, which is interesting. A couple of people, Egg and Gas Pump, just come in and draw themselves, like, just go out of their team to draw themselves, entirely just because, like, yo, I don't trust these people. It ends up going okay. However, they get very distracted and actually gets very little done, which means that, like, they get a intro. It's pretty boring, right? It's like 1 second long. It's just a face. So they get a little done. I mean, the other team, in the meantime, with the cooperation and capability, manages to make an intro with the fellas, with everybody in it and everything that makes sense. The orderly chaos is more just being like chaos, because, like, that's Devil's line. It's more being chaos, because they're not exactly doing a great job at actually keeping everything organized. Everybody's up for elimination except Egg and Gas Pump, I think. Voting has changed a little bit. We're not using any of the square brackets anymore, because I guess people weren't using them. I mean, it's kind of difficult when you gotta explain. I mean, I would have it just on screen, like, vote to save, we use this for save and this for eliminate, right? Like, it makes sense, because, like, saying it works, but you need to have both, right? You need to be able to hear the instructions, but you also need to be capable of seeing the instructions as well. It's easier to follow if you can also see them. So I just recommend having them on the side, vote to whatever, right? So yeah. Overall, my opinion on this show is that it's, honestly okay in terms of what it is. Again, I'm not going to judge a 9-year-old show harshly, right? But, like, in general, it could absolutely use with finding a way to make it landscape. You know, just don't do those zoom-ins. You can do the exact same episode, but without the zoom-ins, right, that you do with the finger. And then eventually in a video editor, you can take it and make it full screen, right? And make it and flip it horizontally and make it full screen. It's going to be great, right? But that's just all that we need here. And everything else, and it's going to be solid, right? So, like, that's absolutely my recommendation. Other than that, story arcs are fine, a little bit drawn out, animation, relatively suitable. Again, can't judge it too harshly, and it's starting to implement more flip and clip animation visuals as well, which is interesting. You know, we can start implementing those into the show as well. So, I see the vision, but it definitely needs to do something to fix the vertical screen, just a mobile screen recording, because it just looks super cheap, right? Alright, that's all for Duo. Next show. The next show that we're going to be taking a look at is titled Free Food. So about 2 weeks ago, a show titled Free Food dropped on the Free Food official channel, which now has 200 subscribers after the release of the episode. Free Food originally got teased about 4 months ago. I don't really know what to expect, but it was recommended by OSC Central, or Object Central, which happens to be a channel. I believe they also work on the show itself. So yeah, episode 1A has garnered itself a little bit of traction, getting about 4.2 thousand views in the 2 weeks ever since both it was released and it was recommended to me. I am very late to the party. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it. Let's see what is up. Alright, so that is Free Food 1A throw thingy. So this is an interesting little thing. So I was trying to figure out how to describe what I was looking at, because it's a very difficult thing to kind of pinpoint down specifically, right? However, what I think this is, right, is this show sets itself a high bar. Okay, the standard that it set itself in terms of production, with animation, with voices as well, with writing, with the concept, it ends up trying to do all of the high level stuff, right? Like it does quite a bit, all right, which is pretty interesting. However, it doesn't quite have the consistency to be able to get over the line all the time, right? It gets over the line of what the standards need about 50% of the time. And you'll notice this, literally animation scene by scene, the way that it is, it ends up kind of it has an air of inconsistency throughout it, right? Like you'll notice that like even nearly every animation is like overall relatively solidly done. However, they don't quite match each other in the way that the quality goes, in the way that everything goes. Like it's not super standardized, right? Kind of like, for example, one guy's animation has the torch fire actually lit and bloom, right? And get animated. Meanwhile, nobody else's has that be animated, right? So that is a problem, for example, because it's inconsistency. For example, in the starting scene, the bed is blue, alright? But then, for the following scenes, the bed is red, like in Minecraft, right? Like, there's an inconsistency to it, because of just, like, we've not quite matched everything. We're not quite managing to match everything. And it's like barely not there. Everybody's individually works, but it's not perfectly matched, right? Like, for example, like you can kind of see it when you transition from the intro to the next scene. You'll see how there's a quality dip. Not because the animation is worse, it's just because of like exporting. We've not managed to consistent anything, right? We've just kind of kept everything off, which is unfortunate, because like it has a relatively solid okay, I mean, the premise of the show is really simple. It's just it's a show with a guy who's hosting it, and there's the contestants that want to be in it, so they went on a bus to go to the ground to do the thing. It's like very average show thing. However, that can be perfectly suitable as well, right? Like, it depends on the challenges, which we don't get to see. Apparently, the challenge was just tag. So, yeah, we get to see a couple of interesting character dynamics. We have this little notepad fella who is like this book, like, what is it called? Notebook? Like, no, notebook's like freaking computer. Whatever. Who's kind of like the more bossy girl type. Kind of this is the green shell, who was gonna go hang out with Candy, or they're like, yo, okay, fine, I'll talk to you. But then the Candy ends up taking it wrong and thinks, yo, I'm all sad now because my friend ditched me, so I guess I wasn't important. And then the teaming somebody else, and then apparently the chair, who I think is not an anime contestant at all, is also the person who exists. You have a couple of fellas. Like, yeah, it's interesting. It's relatively standard team forming shenanigans. The cast themselves, it's relatively solid. I see some designs that I enjoy a lot. I find like the bubble freaking soda, I think is really interesting. I think the frisbee's pretty solid. The torch themselves, it's a good design. The host has a relatively solid design with the bottle. The bag is also pretty cool. And then we have ourselves the teams. So the teams end up being Team 1, the Silly Goobers. So the Silly Goobers are the picnic bag, the frisbee, the lampshade, I think, and then the bag. This team seems to be doing, I mean, yeah, they're kind of gonna probably be the half and half, you know, like half of them are super fun, silly fellas, and the other half is kind of like, bro, what are we doing out here, right? So that's probably what they're more likely to be. The other team is called this is Burger, Chair, Torch, Candy, and the Skateboard. This team is, I mean, if they can agree on a plan. Okay, no, this team can execute a very good plan, because Skateboard, I think, probably pretty solid, and Torch is very physical, right? And then Burger and Candy, I think, are relatively solid minds, so we'll have to see. I think this team has got some very high potential. Then we end up having the Girl Alliance, who is the girls with, like, I'm gonna call you Yarn Microphone, because I don't know what you are. You're like a microphone, but it looks like you're made out of yarn. The notebook, the calendar, and then the green shell. So those are those four. They'll make up the Girl Alliance. This team feels like it's probably going to be too busy over a technical victory. Like, oh, but I don't want to get in the water. I need to win morally. So then they're probably not actually going to do very well in challenges. And then, yeah, again, the first challenge is tag. I'm predicting that team to be able to do very well, especially with Torch in it. I have very, very high expectations of how that team would do. However, yeah, overall, this show just needs a little bit more consistency out the board. I don't think the pacing is very good. I'm not gonna lie, the pacing felt a little bit slow. It felt like the pause, like, I don't think that the pauses between characters talking, I don't think it felt very justified. Like, at the end of the day, like, you can try to improve on it, you know, in the audio department. You gotta imagine, like, compare how, like, a show like BDI, like, at the end of the day, we still do pauses between characters speaking. However, it has to be at a certain level, right? Like, you know, certain moments more, certain moments less. And in this case, it feels like the average is way longer than it should be. So the pauses feel kind of a bit more awkward than they have the right to be. However, it makes the actual intended long pauses superbly extra long. So, like, I think that, like, pacing on the dialogue needs a little bit of improvement, but overall, every component is solid. I think that the writing, we've got a relatively interesting cast, and sure, the setting can be interesting, right? Okay, sure. I think that the animation, everybody does a solid job. It's high standard, high quality assets, high quality animation with lip syncing, and the asset style is all very solid on that case as well. It's just inconsistent from animator to animator, and we need to sort that out. Otherwise, it just looks a little bit jarring, right? Especially since, you know, this show has gotten support. At the end of the day, it's got 4,000 views. People are interested. Now it's your time to shine, right? Even stuff like voice acting, majority of voice actors are perfectly suitable. However, a couple of them you can hear a lot of background noise, so you gotta like sort out the quality standard, right? Like, you gotta do to a certain point. So yeah, if we can sort all that stuff out, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. Like, it's got a lot of potential. It feels like we've got, like, I see a lot of potential. It just needs to clean up the rough edges, right? Because instead of being a circle, right, it's currently a rhombi-dodecahedron. You know, it's like it's very rough. We need to clean up the pain points, get it to look like a consistent one product, and if we can make it look like a consistent one product, we are gonna have a cool show. Obviously, we haven't seen a challenge. We don't know how that's going to work. We don't know how the animators who have managed to animate these talking scenes pretty well are going to manage to animate an action scene. We don't know that. However, we're going to need to discover that. But yeah, basically, try to make it more consistent from scene to scene. Try to make writing a little bit more snappy. And same thing goes for all the other departments. Just try to make it a little bit more concise from person to person so it doesn't feel as jarring. That's all for free food. Next. The next show that we're going to be talking about is titled Fight for Rupees. So it was recommended to me by John MiniBoiOSC about 2 weeks ago, a little bit under 2 weeks ago. But yeah, so Fight for Rupees is a series created by MiniBoi, which is a creator with about 241 subscribers currently. This is a relatively new series. It started about 4 months ago. However, it's already had 11 episodes in that time span. Yes, this series is managing to get a lot of episodes pretty quickly. But is that going to come at the cost of quality? Well, I guess we'll find out by watching the 11/12 episodes, starting with episode 1, Right Foot Creep. Go. Alright, that is episode 1 of Fight for Rupees. So we are dealing ourselves with a certified object point moment. It is indeed inspired by object point in the original way that it is, you know, with characters that are sort of memey. They do Mimi things for Mimi reasons, right? And everything is kind of a joke. This has an interesting capability of having no idea how stereo audio works. At some point, it plays on both ears, and it's perfectly fine. At some points, a character only speaks on the right ear, sometimes only speaks on the left ear, and then it swaps out. Even if it's the same character, it might just swap out at complete random, and it's like, bruh, I would enjoy listening to a series with headphones, you know, like but not having it be pain. I hope that this isn't a recurring theme, but I have a slight fear that it is. Challenge: stand on your right foot and don't fall into the lava. A coconut fella just manages to get rid of pretty much everybody by saying, I'm gonna tickle you, and then they fucking throw a fireball at them. I mean, well, the other fella is Door, who just auto-combusts by just crashing out, which means that by doing absolutely nothing, Ring gets by, and Coconut, by just being a menace, but overall pretty good at the challenge, manages to also make it by. So they will choose the teams in episode 1B, except no, it's actually episode 2. Why have we banished 1A and 1B naming systems? It's so good. We need to stop banishing them, alright? Like, bro, we need to stop. Anyways, do I actually think that this is a copy of Object Point by Tim Zipu in terms of like what is being said by the character themselves? I think that, I mean, no, it's currently not seeming as extreme at the way that it ends up delivering its stuff, but you know, again, episodes are incoming. We're gonna need to see how stuff is gonna go. So let's go straight on to episode 2, Ransom. Go. Alright, that is episode 2 of Fight for Rupees. So the teams end up choosing their teams. They don't choose team names, I think, but we end up having ourselves a couple of teams. So Wedding Ring's team ends up having a shovel on a unicorn, who's apparently a bestie. Door, who remember really doesn't like Wedding Ring, and also this fella, who looks like tomato paste. And that means that the other team ends up having, with Coconut leading it, Tuna, who's apparently a dobro, Burrito, who's pretty chill. They also have, I guess, the soup bowl, the potato bowl. I don't even know what you are, but you end up having it, and then also Vaseline, which is apparently what the complainer was. So yeah, that team ends up losing because, wait, what are you called? Curry chicken. Oh, curry chicken. Sorry. But yeah, because Shovel manages to get rid of the wall of racism. Yes, the challenge is to stop racism. There are white kids on one end, black kids on the other. There's a wall of racism in the middle. You have to stop racism by lifting the wall of racism. I don't think that's exactly how racism works. Racism is when you're faced with each other and you dislike each other, rather than this. This is just segregation. But like, I understand the idea. But yeah, good job on Shovel managing to lift the wall of racism and fixing all racism in the world. Let's go. Who's getting eliminated? I don't know. The other team didn't really even get to try. Coconut did appear in the episode, so maybe them. No, Vaseline out. Let's say Vaseline gets out. All right. Episode 3 is titled "Love the Way You Lie." Is that a song? Let's go. Alright, interesting thing that I just watched. That is episode 3. So first of all, the audio that I complained about in episode 1 seems to have been fixed for now, at least for the last 2 episodes. It has remained perfectly suitable. So Tuna Can is the best rapper alive. I must admit, when I see that they made Tuna Can the best rapper alive, I'm immediately thinking, yo, you looked at Object Invasion and you tried to copy the homework. Because of course Tuna or WoW has that whole arc with trying to be super cool, and then we're making the Tuna Can and they show the super cool one. Like, hey, I see what you're doing. I see it. We end up having the what is the rap called? Tuna Can. Yeah, Sigma host ever. All fish on me. True. So the eliminated contestant does end up being Vaseline with about 4 votes. I love how somebody voted the wall race. That's really funny. But yeah, they end up getting eliminated with 4 votes. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like people just kind of find it awkward as a concept for a character. So yeah, goodbye. And you were also extremely annoying in episode 1. And then the challenge ends up being to get through Area 51 without pissing off Riot Love. Who? Wait, hold on. Let me give me a listen. Ryolov, the hit person. I don't know who it is, but they might get pissed off, but Door just kind of kills them with their crash out powers, so they end up winning. which means that Coconut's team, yet again, by just simply not doing anything in time, ends up getting out of the competition, which is relatively unfortunate. I mean, we did, of course, discover Tunacan the rapper, but I'm gonna say the Burrito gets out here, because Burrito had the whole obese shook or whatever, right, and they're kind of dead. Because Coconut should still be alive. Tunacan, I don't know if people are gonna find it a bad arc that they're doing, but I'm gonna say Burrito gets out here as kind of the compromise between all of the other options. So yeah, that's the decision that I think I'm going to be making on this one. Alright, I believe that it is now time to watch 5 for Rupees 4. 5 for Rupees 4, the longest episode yet, is titled Took Her to the O. Alright, so that is episode 4 of Fight for Rupees. So, this episode, more than the other ones managed to keep themselves at a way more relaxed tone. However, this as proper been like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be object point, and they decided to be object point, and the only way that an object point can be an object point, by shouting at the top of your lungs as many times as humanly possible. Oh my god, it's actually so loud all the time. Yeah, I mean, that is just one of the elements, right, of this type of show, this type of shitposty show, right? Like, you're just gonna have a lot of shouting, you're gonna have a lot of, like, I guess, nonsensical lore going on, and at the same way, like, I respect Object Point for committing to it, and I think that it ends up getting quite a bit of viewers, because, again, it's so extreme, right? Like, the shouting, for example, is so extreme. The characters, the way that they speak is so extreme, like, mean it in an interesting way, right? To the point where it's like, since it's extreme to such a degree, it's like, it really feels like it'll resonate with who it'll resonate. It really won't resonate with who it doesn't resonate, but it really will to whoever does, right? Which is what makes stuff like Object Point work. And then this, of course, follows on from it. So, if it occurs, a rapper, I don't know enough to know what rapper it is. I'm not enough of a knowledge. Ends up stealing away wedding ring away, and then everybody else does the elimination, where actually ends up that Coconut gets eliminated after a tie with Tunacan. Yeah, I completely miscalculated it at the end of the day. I thought Burrito was going to start getting votes. Burrito actually didn't start getting any votes, which means that, yeah, they're perfectly safe. My bad. I should have probably managed to clock that, but, like, I considered validly why a character like a white Coconut or Tunacan would get votes, but I didn't clock that the Burrito wouldn't, so my bad. And then we end up having ourselves the the footage where we end up having the challenge start. So the challenge is to bring back wedding ring from the rapper guy. And then, yeah, Unicorn is just constantly crying, going like, wah, wah, right? So they're being like super sad. And they end up being like, I don't care, I'm sad, right? They don't know how to do anything, right? So then that team doesn't know how to get anything, so they try to buy an airplane for exchange for a unicorn. However, they get scammed, which means that, well, they actually get scammed by Curry Bowl, no, by like Indian curry, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which eventually feeds them sugar, which makes them happy again, which means, yeah, I'll help you because you gave me the sugar, right? So they end up doing that and flying all the way over to the lair where they managed to take down evil rapper guy. They managed to get wedding ring back from evil rapper guy, and eventually they escape the horde of bullets and get the challenge done. Dora is honestly for the first time validly crashing out at the unicorn for technically running up against their team, which means that everybody's up for elimination. It's an interesting team to put up for elimination because one guy gets fucking scammed. One guy is just mad all the time. Wedding Ring is the one who got robbed, and Unicorn technically betrayed the team. Shovel doesn't have anything to do with anything. Who gets eliminated here? I would say that probably Unicorn would still get eliminated here. However, there's an argument to be made for Door. I'm gonna say Unicorn, but but again, people don't like characters that like disregard the challenge, and Unicorn definitely did disregard the challenge, so I'm gonna say that. Anyways, 5 for Rupees 5 is titled EXO Tour Life with a 3 instead of an E. Let's watch it. Alright, that is episode 5. So let's actually talk about the end, which we haven't talked about it for the past couple of episodes. So episode by episode, there's been this post-credit scene story arc going on, where basically the moon randomly exploded one day, as it just so happens. Then a meteor fell out, presumably from it, in episode 4 next to a tuna can, and then in this episode it's on fire. Is the moon on fire, or is it literally, hold on, you know what, I don't know, hold on, is that the moon? That is the moon, or is it? I think it's the moon. Yeah, I think the moon is on fire. So it exploded, now it's on fire, and then a piece of it are falling. Basically, the moon is down, and we need to figure out who did this. We currently don't know, but that's on the way. Anyway, the eliminated contestant is Shovel, actually, with 4 votes. You see, okay, I don't really know how the voting for this works. I don't know how the viewers are voting here. Because, for example, you could vote based on action, or you could vote based on irrelevancy. In the last episode, I predicted based on irrelevancy on Burrito, and it didn't work. Nobody voted Burrito. But in this case, I was like, okay, I'm not going to vote on irrelevancy. I'm going to say that the irrelevant character stays in. So I consider Shovel super safe. But then Shovel isn't safe because based on the irrelevancy, right? So I don't really know how the hell the viewers are voting, but I guess if they do what they do. So Monitor ends up being a new co-host and immediately goes rogue because someone said, shut your bitch. And then we end up having ourselves them spawning in a shit ton of minions, and by shit ton I mean 1. So the challenge ends up being to stop the minion and also stop TV, and stop Monitor from the spawning minions. Of course, that means it's door crash out time, because when door is crashing out, that means that it is the strongest being on this planet, so it manages to defeat the people eating minion and also destroy the Monitor, which makes everybody happy. Apparently that gave it a system update on accident. I swear that is a thing in Object Point, right? Like something got destroyed and then it booted up as a new software update because of the way that it got destroyed. Like, that's something that's happened in Object Point before, I'm pretty sure, and it's pretty goofy. Arc then, and it remains really silly of an arc here. Like, bro, what are we doing? But then we have ourselves a debut logo. It's a bit early for a debut. But, yeah, we have ourselves a couple of characters. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Not a lot of them inspire me, in terms of what would be good here. In terms of just what would be a good character, I like the firework. I think the firework is interesting. It makes for some easy gags. And then, other than that, I'm not seeing too much going on. As with this show, I would generally just recommend to pick the most meme answer. So probably somebody like, I don't know, fucking UK Flag or Kanye's best album. Right, like one of these fellas, like where it's like completely and entirely based on a meme. That way you can kind of match the energy of the show. I think it makes the most sense. However, there's some cool fellas. I have no idea who's getting in. I'm trying to think if there's anything. No, I can't. No, I really can't think of something. I cannot currently imagine anybody really joining because I wasn't. I don't know. I've not been. I wasn't too inspired by the lineup that I saw. But hey, we can see it later. It's now for episode 6. Episode 6 of Fight for Rupees is titled Runaway. Headphone warning. Oh, because the other ones weren't loud enough. Okay, fine. Let's go. Alright, so that is episode 6 of Fight for Rupees, and okay, this comes up every time that I take a look at something like this. I take a look at something like Object Point, I take a look at something like this, right? And I mentioned it partially to the reason why I think people might like it, right? But now I need to ask the question which I can't clock. I cannot figure it out for the life of me why. Why is it that people are enamored by these loud noises? I don't understand it. I'm not gonna lie. I was around back in the day, even back in like 2017, 2018, right? When bass boosted videos, they were a thing, right? Having this whole bass boosted bomb, right? And it's super loud, and like it was called ear rape, right? And like all of this shit. And it's like, okay. But, like, even back then, and I was into some stupid shit. I made We Are Number One memes. Like, I I didn't understand why that was funny. I didn't understand why that was funny. I'm not gonna lie. Even back in the day, because I looked at it like I remember those weird number one memes that I mentioned nearly every time when like fucking Robbie Ron stepped on the branch and made a super loud noise. It's like, why? It takes it out, because it's not fun for the ears. It's not. It doesn't make anything sound good. It's just a sound that is loud, right? And like. And that doesn't, and that's kind of the thing that makes it weird, because like, for example, I would like to praise this show for being like, oh yo, at least it's got like hip hop representation, right, and it's for that type of people. But at the same time, well, it's got hip hop representation. It's more got hip hop depresentation, because we're making them the villains, and we're also making their music entirely unlistenable by just the fact that we're bass boosting it to the extreme. So it's like we're not really putting any type of respect on those names, right? We're just kind of disrespecting it. So that is, I don't really get it. Just respectfully, I don't really understand it. I mean, like, I get it. It's not for me, right? Like, it's not for me. I just don't really understand why how it is for someone, right? Like, I'll still, of course, cover it. And I don't really mind that much, but it's just kind of weird how this is a thing, Like, I don't exactly understand it. Anyways, the actual story. Apparently, somebody Marbly went off to search for a planet. So their older brother, which is apparently arrives from the moon, titled Marb, they're coming in. So Marb is kind of like that one fella from Object Point. I don't remember what exactly you were. It was like some evil iPhone. And then the evil me phone ended up being like super, ended up just saying idiot. I mean, kind of super like directly mean to you all of the time. This guy is just that to the exact beat. Like, it's not like we didn't even try to make it more original. We're just like, you guys get 0 votes, idiot. And they say it in the exact same way as well. Like, there is not an ounce of attempting to do originality here, which is unfortunate, because until now we were trying to do originality, but now we're not trying to do originality anymore, and we're doing sound so loud, or we're even putting a headphone warning on. So it's like, I don't really know what's going on. But yeah, the joining contestants end up being none other than this rapper fella I don't remember the name of, and then the UK flag who speaks in British English. And then we end up having it. I kind of like the UK flag inclusion because it's so funny, because like this sort of sophisticated gag that is British English ends up kind of working so at odds with the way that the show acts that it ends up being kind of completely, like, it's completely off-putting. Challenge is to make teams. That doesn't make any sense. So that means that the Wedding Ring teams just get up for elimination because Morb doesn't like them at all. That means that Door, Wedding Ring, and Unicorn up for elimination. I think it's probably time for Door to go. The crash outs have been very useful. However, they've also been, of course, very mean sometimes for no apparent reason. So I think that they're probably going to get out, but I don't really know. Episode 7, Sicko Mode. Go. Alright, that is episode 7 of Fight for Rupees, Sicko Mode. So, okay, let's start off here yet again with the end, because I always forget to talk about it later. What is happening? So, like, there's this moon lore. So, apparently, Marbly was chilling on the moon, trying to discover the moon. But we're calling planets, by the way. There has been a major confusion between what is a moon and what is a planet. But, like, bro is definitely on the moon, but treating it as planets. But, yeah, moon hard drive. So they have a moon hard drive, and apparently it says that the planet will explode. The planet, I don't know if we're referring to the moon or not. In an unknown amount of time, which is interesting, because didn't the moon already explode? What is happening? Or were we saying that, or is the moon hard drive predicting the explosion of Earth? And then it's like, that's bad. And then some Sparkle fella being like, Mobo, do you regret what you did? And it's like, what? Okay, yeah, I don't really know. We're vague. We're being very vague here. But yeah, we end up having ourselves an elimination that gets obviously rigged with 6-7 votes. We end up having none other than the big we end up having Wedding Ring eliminated, yes, because the fella doesn't like them. So they end up dipping away, and then more, but with their the energy from their lair, ends up going sicko mode and absolutely zapping everybody, turning them into actual world cover art. So people hide in the only place they can, the peakest clubhouse ever, with a bunch of interesting items on it. However, they end up eventually, Soda Can ends up eventually finding a message. They send Tuna Can with a message to them saying, "Please save us." So then Marbly stops them and manages to save their fella in one fell swoop. And then the series is back. I believe the wedding ring is genuinely just eliminated, though, so they don't seem to be coming back to life here. And then I bet it's up for elimination. Apparently, the next episode is The Merge, which is interesting. Here we have Door, Unicorn, Tuna Can, Curry Chicken, and Burrito up for elimination. Pretty bad team to be up for elimination because half of them just died immediately, right? Like Unicorn was the first death, Burrito was the second, the Tuna Door was the third. Right? None of those three even made it to the clubhouse. Curry Chicken, if I'm not mistaken, did, so they're relatively chill. However, the Tuna Can also eventually died off to get sent away by the lean dispenser, whatever it is. Right. So yeah, I mean, who gets that? I have no idea. Door seems to be say no. I think Door. I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't know who gets eliminated here. I don't know what the current opinion is. I'm saying Tuna Can. Tuna Can out. So, alright, let's go with that. Because they got the most votes, like, the other time. So, maybe. I don't know. Something like that. But yeah, this episode, in my opinion, is a little bit better than the other ones. Because, like, for the meanwhile, they're, like, basically, what I think is that when the jokes are just something that I don't personally like, right? Like, yeah, stuff like RJ Point, stuff like this, it's not personally my style of humor, right? But at least, like, I can comprehend it. Like, yo, I don't like the jokes that they're making, like the one at the start, or the freaking lean, or whatever, or like the 9/11 that they do constantly, right? But, like, in general, it's like, I get it. But I still prefer it to something like the last episode because, like, I equally don't get it. However, not getting it still makes it relatively, like, it's relatively tough to even watch because it's loud, right? And it's, like, relatively annoying. So I personally prefer watching an episode like this where it's like, it does the jokes that it does. I can enjoy or not enjoy them. I see why people would enjoy them. However, like, I can still watch it without being too bothered, rather than this episode. To be fair, this episode's still loud, but it's not, like, as loud, right? So we end up having quite a little bit of an improvement, in my opinion, in that department. But yeah, I guess we will have to see what ends up happening out here. But yeah, it's trying vague lore. I feel like currently this series is maybe struggling by the fact that it's not really trying to commit to any lore. Like, it's doing the moon lore kind of half-assed. It's doing the morb lore kind of half-assed. Kind of half-assing everything. I'm curious if it's ever going to start trying to proper lock in. Go like, this is the thing, you know? Alright, episode 8 of A Fight for Rupees is titled Long Time Intro. Okay then, let's go. Alright, that is episode 8 of Fight for Rupees, long time intro. So yet again, we're gonna start at the end, otherwise I forget. So Door gets kidnapped during the course of the challenge, as it's the merge now, by the way. They're also up for no, wait, they're not actually up for elimination. What? Why not? What? Why are they not up for elimination? That's actually crazy. But, like, they definitely did not. They definitely got out before freaking two. Nah, that's bullshit. But anyways, they get a proposition offered by Mr. Spark, and I think they'll like it very much. Look, they're trying to take down Marbly. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. I don't think there's too much to it. But yeah, the eliminated contestant this time ends up being none other than Burrito, who eventually, after some struggles, manages to get launched up into space with the reinforced platform. Yeah, that makes sense. You know, I predicted that the voters were going to turn on Burrito much earlier. It ends up happening much later. But yeah, I mean, Burrito getting out was pretty inevitable to me personally. There's just not much worth keeping them around. So, bye-bye. And then the challenge is to survive the entirety of Has-Been Hotel. Yes, Has-Been Hotel is the punching bag for today's episode of Fight for Rupees. What do I think? I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, yo, I know that we're complaining. I know that people complain about 50 pop shows for being like kind of super corny, and good writing is like swearing and all that stuff. Yeah, I understand those are critiques, but the problem is if this show is the one making the critiques, I don't know if this show is the right show to give off the complaint that this is too corny humor. This show is the epitome of exactly that. Like, this is exactly that. It's nonsensical because that we think that it makes sense, right? Like, it's not, what? I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of valid critiques to place on it, but I don't know if this show can place any of it. I don't think this show's an authority to this Has-Been Hotel. Is that, oh yes, I don't watch Has-Been Hotel. What's a much greater media, like Object Point, like, bro, whatever. Let's go to the 9th episode, which is the longest episode. Shit's about to go down. Sparkles in the thumbnail. Crazy story featuring ImposterJ and your boy Tay. Alright, so that is episode 9 of Fight for Rupees, and the episode where stuff starts to go down, because indeed we have ourselves a bunch of stuff taking place. Of course, in the last few episodes we ended up getting ourselves a lot of that lore hinted at, right? That it was incoming, stuff was about to go down, right? Stuff was about to happen, and in fact it is happening. We get the lore. Is this reminiscent of Object Point? Very much so. It's that type of lore where it's kind of like evil entity from another planet comes to this planet to try to take over, right? That's kind of the arc that the Shape fellas took. This is doing a little bit of an outsider like perspective on it. Like, it's doing a little bit of a different situation where like there is a more concise reason other than like kind of the other reason, especially because if you think about it, Object Point, at least the current Object Point, of course this could be inspired by any Object Point, but the current Object Point ends up being very much so just kind of taking the adventure script and doing it again. But this is at least trying to add a little bit of a spin to it, which I think is kind of fun. So let's actually chat about what the hell happened. So the Shape fella is escaping the prison after murdering a police officer pretty brutally. They have some crazy eye powers that allows them to cause explosions, lasers, any of that stuff, right? So while the police officers are chasing him, he decides that he has to make it stop. So he murders the police officers, burns down the building, and manages to get away. A police officer officially succumbs as he goes to a rocket, which just so happens to exist and be there. And then he happens to immediately... I'm saying he, I don't know. I'm just going to say he, okay? We're going to come in with a rocket, and then eventually does not manage to have enough fuel to make it to go here on Earth to eventually defeat. So he ends up landing on the moon, causing a big explosion. Not the entire moon was down, which is what makes it different, because it looks like the entirety of the moon exploded from the shot in the other video. However, here we only really end up having it like from like it's only a tiny blip. It wasn't too much. And we also get discovered that the moon is where the eliminated contestants go. So that's what's going on. So that's why the moon exploding doesn't necessarily mean that like somebody else is chasing you. Is because we are sending people out there. So silly eliminated contestants causing an explosion, right? So like I understand, like I see it. Okay, sure, right? So then that happens, and then they end up trying to build up a bunch of drones. So like, okay, then let's build some drones and get up there. It doesn't end up working. He ends up flopping quite a bit. The controls, so that makes the other little explosions on Earth, the meteor stuff, that's apparently the meteor actually was a drone. Okay, so like I'm understanding, like we're doing a pretty good job at connecting the dots together, but we're kind of connecting the dots together with kind of rose tinted glasses. Like, that's not what it looked like. It was not a drone that was falling, it was a meteor. But okay, fine, right? Like, I don't know, one of those. So eventually they end up getting Shovel to fix the rocket for them, and then they manage to escape by the rocket to get down to Earth. Then we end up having ourselves the challenge of the elimination, where the eliminated contestant is none other than Tuna-can. I got it correct, indeed. We ended up being very samey in the way that the votes are being portrayed. I guess there aren't too many different people voting from episode to episode currently, right? So you can kind of just guess. But Coconut loses a rap battle. You not even the fuck. And then we end up having ourselves, apparently there isn't a challenge. They end up just walking through a weed forest, getting high, apparently. But we get like some text saying that happened. And then eventually the winner ends, and you need to vote either 21 Savage, 21 Savage, 21 Savage, or 21 Savage to be eliminated. The 21 Savage, the most votes, will be eliminated. I'm not gonna lie, if you are a rapper, you are not safe from this show. Okay, any day now. Like, if you are a popular rapper, it is over for you. This show is coming out to get you. There's one per episode. I'm telling you. When is the Kendrick Lamar dropping? I'm telling you, or is Kendrick Lamar too good to get this by the show? Maybe Kendrick Lamar might be too good. I don't know. But yeah, overall, the main question, of course, arrived. Is this a successfully done plot arc? I think, yeah, sure, why not? You know, it's yeah, honestly, I don't really have much to critique it, because it's like, with Object Point, it felt like such a weirdly random mission, like, clash with it, right? Which made it kind of intriguing in the way that watching a car crash is intriguing. However, watching this, it felt like at least there's a little bit more originality to the actual plot arc itself, right? There's a little bit of additional ideas put in there, and Fight for Rupees isn't as extreme in the way that it carries out its humor as something like Object Point is, right? So that means that it can fit itself in a bit more nicely. I think the inclusion of the additional VAs for the initial scene, I'm presuming they're the police officers, Ji and Tae, to do their lines, is again a nice little additional. It adds in this layer of not sounding extremely stupid, right? And everything ends up doing extremely, right? So it manages to overall have still, of course, a lot of gags while still carrying out the arc. So honestly, I definitely don't mind it. It's still a little goofy. It's still a little Object Point-esque. But if we're gonna do something, sure, do it like that. Why not? Yeah. Alright, episode 10 is not non-existent. That's true. Episode 10 doesn't exist. We are skipping episode 10 and going straight to episode 11, which is titled FOMDJ. I don't know what any of that means. I don't know why you skipped an episode. I don't know what's going on. I do know that we're going to go watch it. Let's go. Okay, so that is episode 11. So apparently episode 10 became a lost media because a nuke exploded it, right? Which, I mean, I don't know why that happened. We get to kind of skip the whole weed challenge, apparently. Apparently, Unicorn murdered everybody, but, so that means that that doesn't matter. Nothing mattered. Nothing apparently mattered. And 21 Savage was eliminated. So, like, yeah. With episode 10 didn't really matter. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Although we don't have any information about the door yet, which we really should have by now. You know, because door has been gone for like, what, 30 episodes? Come on. We need to start knowing what the hell is going on. Okay, because otherwise I don't know what's going on, right? Playboy Cardi shows up and is now a contestant, maybe. The challenge is to become Playboy Cardi, and Playboy Cardi's safe, so that means that everybody else is up for elimination. So, like, I don't know. Maybe Playboy Cardi's a contestant. It's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, who's getting eliminated? I don't know. I'm gonna say Soda Tay or Soda J's time to go, because like, well, but Unicorn did murder everybody while being high, apparently, according to the episode. Okay, let's say that. Oh, no, I'm gonna say Unicorn. I'm saying it's Unicorn's time to go, but honestly, I don't really know. Alright, that's that episode. Not really sure why it exists. Gonna be absolutely for real. We've kind of, like, randomly paused. I thought we were doing stories here, but no, okay. Or fine, Playboy Card. Episode 12, and the latest one, White Ferrari. Alright, so that is episode 12 of Fight for Rupees White Ferrari. So, as a reviewer, I feel like I should obviously say my opinion for sure. this entire series is genuinely so abysmal. Like, as a music reviewer, this makes me want to physically rip both my ears and my eyes out. Genuinely the worst piece of media on this entire internet that you'll ever gaze your eyes upon. Like, I wouldn't even rate this the same as Total Xanarchy by Lil Xan or A Great Chaos by Ken Carson. If I had the option to choose a negative rating, this would literally achieve that rating. I'm feeling a strong 0 on this series, and maybe on a good day, I'm feeling a not good. Transition to me playing Dandy. Okay, yeah. I remember when Object Point did the joke, I read it out as well, so I'm gonna also, so I also did that. But yeah, Marbly ends up leaving because they got the press, so that means that Monitor ends up hosting the elimination. Unicorn gets out with 11 votes, so they end up apparently flying off to space until they get to mysteriously teleported away. But then a new marble drops into town. Yes, a new marble. New marble dropped. This new marble is called Mab. Wait, what is your name? You are the Mab. Yes, Mab. Because they were just lost. They were just like, yo, do you know my older brother Morb? I was trying to find them the other day, and nobody has the heart to tell them that they fucking murdered them. So they end up being like, oh, okay, I guess we'll leave. And they're like, no, please, we need a host. We need a host. Map, I know you don't know what a fucking object show is. You don't know how to host. You just host, please. I'm begging you. So Map host doesn't really have a challenge to try hosting with. However, they end up trying to find the quickest thing on earth, and they find Frank Ocean. So the challenge is to get Frank Ocean to drop music. You know what? That's actually an extremely funny idea. I actually vibe with that challenge a lot. That's like hilarious. That's an elite tier challenge. I'm telling you, no rapper is safe. So if you are a rapper, this show is coming out. This show is going to call you out. 5 full rupees is coming in for all of them. All of the big boy rappers. I'm telling you, bro. But yeah, we end up asking them to do that, and then the soda can or whatever you call it, soda can ends up pointing a gun at Frank Ocean and be like, yeah, no music. I mean, they don't say that, they say a song lyric, but then Frank Ocean says, fine, this is the album, bro. So that means that they end up winning, and the other people are up for elimination as these three. The most important part is actually the post-credit scene. So the Saturn fella, Jupiter fella, who is off scouting the Earth, ends up getting fucking murdered by Door and Unicorn, who happen to be the duo that got lined up by Sparkle here to try to take down their opposition and be able to fully take down Marbly. They end up plugging in a USB to a computer, which is interesting. And then we don't quite get to see what happened. There is a YouTube link that hides itself over there. I checked. It's just kind of like a weird fake advert for a bank. Maybe that could have something to do with what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to like rob a bank or something. But in general, I'm not seeing too much about what's going to happen in this case. So, yeah. What is going to happen with the lore? I don't really know. I'm expecting something, of course, along the line of eventually there's going to be a confrontation. I mean, it'd be a pretty good time to come in and attack Marbly, because, of course, Marbly is currently not even hosting the competition, right? So, I would absolutely, if I was the villain, I would absolutely cause this conflict now, when we're not even protected, rather than there, when we have the protection of the show, right? So, I would do that, personally, if I was Mr. Sparkly, but we're probably still going to be waiting a couple of more episodes, and then eventually, maybe with the additional support of one person, maybe with the additional input of like a planet exploding thing, because apparently, you know, the planet will explode, so maybe we can implement like the USB is going to hack the Earth or whatever, is going to make it explode, right? Like something like that's going to happen. And yeah, so that is the current state of Fight for Rupees. Of course, Fight for Rupees releases pretty often, so we'll probably have new episodes relatively shortly. However, for Fight for Rupees right now, we're all caught up, which means that, what do I think of it? I think it's pretty solid. It's like a mildly less extreme Object Point, and to the point where, like, it's also a little bit more thematicalized, right? Like, it doesn't quite act as random to me, because at the end of the day, you know, it's very much so like, oh, we make a lot of jokes about rappers, oh, we make a lot of jokes about this, that we do a lot of jokes like that, right? Like, in general, it has its own kind of style, which means that at least it's relatively consistent within the style. It doesn't feel like too random, which is something that Audrey Point I think kind of suffered from, right? Is that like it acted random while also acting extremely like they acted at extremes, but different random extremes, right? In this show, it didn't really do too much. I think maybe like episode 6, the one with the headphone warning, that was rough. That was not a good video. But like other than that, like in general, it manages to, I think, keep itself relatively consistent in the way that it works. So I think it's pretty solid. What do you think is actually getting eliminated here? I don't really know. Probably Soda Can. Yeah, I think Soda Can's time to go. You've not really done much recently, and it's technically your fault for something that happens in this episode. So yeah. Oh yeah, for suggesting Mab to host. Although that is a good idea. They probably should have just Soda Can's probably getting that. I still believe that. But yeah, so that's 5 for rupees. Hey, we'll probably be chatting more about it relatively soon because it has episodes relatively often. Let's go to the next thing. Alright, next up we're going to be quickly taking a look at 2 shows that haven't had a lot of episodes to their name. They're both recommendations by the same person, but hey, there's not a lot of things to watch, so I'll watch both of them. Created by Plush-us, or BFIDK123, fellow YouTube creator with 901 subscribers actually. Well, they have made Object Show for sure, so we shall watch it, we shall discuss it. Starting off by their show primarily, which is titled BFIDK, or Battle for I Don't Know. Has had 2 episodes so far, 1 and 2A. We're going to watch both of those, starting off with episode 1, Such Sad Last Words, released 7 months ago. Go. Alright, so that is episode 1 of BFIDK. So we end up introducing ourselves to our cast. It's a pretty large cast. How many people are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Oh my god. This is a lot of people. I'm not gonna lie. Which is definitely just the main critique here that I have. There is just a lot of characters, right? I think that the animation here, it's pretty decent. I see the challenge is kind of interesting. Like, we're doing some interesting lines. Character designs are also pretty solid. I like Targety, the host. I like certain fellas, kind of like the inverted, this inverted chip as well. Block Blast is kind of fun with the way that they have blocks that they can stack. The way that the scuffed up sketch sticky note can draw a character to life, right? And other stuff. Like, there's interesting ideas going on here in this cast as well. It's just that they're not quite being capable of delivering it to the extent because there's just so many people, right? So, like, for example, the challenge is the first 13 to get up, and then there were like 7 or something are up for elimination. And it's like, I don't know, we didn't get to see these people. They didn't get up. Right? Like, it's not a great challenge. I would literally probably have halved this cast if I were to recommend, because it's like, if we're making episodes that are about 2 minutes, we're gonna need to have this cast because we just need to have less total people around because it's just kind of complicated. But yeah, overall, it's relatively solid. As far as the balance beam challenge is concerned, of course, it's kind of generic, but like, majority of the people who are safe also don't get screen time, by the way, which is like, oh yeah, we got here off screen, by the way. Like, okay, bro, you don't want to write anything, then why are the characters there, right? It's kind of one of those things where it's like, you gotta trim down this cast. It's too large, you know, you gotta get rid of some of this fluff. But, yeah, other than that, the way that fellas do the challenge is pretty solid. There are some interesting character ideas. I just feel like there's too many characters here to really deliver on them. There is some interesting lore already being teased here. Apparently, the SpongeBob Popsicle manages to see a super evil, fucked up, bloody version of a Targety here with blood and a knife and everything. So maybe there's something. Is that the knife? Do they get a little bit goofy at night, or is that an evil entity, an evil variant? I don't know, maybe, but we will have to find out, I guess, in due time. Because it's time to just already jump into the second episode, because the second episode of BFIDK 2A, which is 350, which is nice, episode's getting longer, is titled New Recovery Center. I don't know. Let's find out. Alright, so that is episode 2A of BFIDK. So we have here a relatively interesting episode. The pacing is slowed way down in the sense that, okay, it's not actually slowed that much down. It's just that when we're doing mandatory things like elimination, it's just kind of gonna take a bit, right? And it ends up taking a good amount it ends up taking basically much the length of the last episode, right? Because with an elimination, you can't quite skip sections of it like you could with a challenge, right? Because, like, you're like, oh, well, how did this end up so fast? Well, it's because in the challenge last time, we didn't see 90% of the challenge. We saw, like, 2 people do it, but, like, we saw, like, 3 people do it, and then everybody else was like, oh, yeah, we did it, by the way. It was, like, off screen, but we did it, right? So it was, like, we saw 20% of what the challenge was, right? If we actually made the entire challenge in the way that it was supposed to be, with everybody showing up and how they got up, then no, that would have actually taken extremely long time. That's the same way that this is probably going to be relatively slow, right? So, yeah. We have ourselves a new co-host, or a duet of co-hosts, which is Santa Hat and Candy Cane, because Christmas time. Yes, go. Shout out to Christmas. But yeah, we have our voting. 13 votes ended up getting cast, and the eliminated contestant is Jolly Rancher with 6. I'm surprised, if I'm not mistaken, they got kicked off by Disc near the end of the last voting. No, near the end of the last challenge, I think, which is interesting, because I thought that, like, they're the victim. Did they do something mean? I didn't notice if they did anything. I thought they were the nice one. I'm not gonna lie. Wait, let me check here for a moment. So yeah, they were just chilling, and then they get caught up by Disc, and then they just get dropped by, and they get eliminated for that. I mean, I guess by the logic that, oh yeah, this person, the character getting eliminated has to be a character that actively does a thing in the episode, because we don't know anything about the other ones. Then Jolly Rancher makes sense, because they're the only one who kind of appeared but also failed. But, like, comparatively speaking to everybody else, I don't really know why they're there. Background noise, by the way, is going to be present. I like how the Japanese character ends up getting leaked by the intro before they actually appeared. I don't even know who they are, but they speak in a rough Japanese. Presumably, we just Google translated a line and we just said it. That's what I'm presuming. I don't think we got native Japanese in here. I'm going to be 100% for real. But, yeah, and then the new recovery center gets discovered. You simply have to draw the character, and they will arrive to life. It's a very interesting recovery system that I think an object should try out sometime, because it does come up with a lot of interesting possibilities. Like, yo, what if the person draws somebody who doesn't exist? What if somebody draws a character badly and it gets misnoticed? What if somebody draws a character with a wrong feature? Do they spawn like that? You know, like, there's a lot of actually interesting questions that you can ask when you're delivering a recovery system where you have to directly draw who it is, right? Because, like, you could draw something wrong, right? Like, it's kind of interesting, right? But yeah, teams get formed forcefully. We have we don't know the team names, but we have a team of 6, 2 teams of 5, and then a team of 4, which is interesting. Why? I mean, I'm sure this would have made sense during the team forming, but we didn't get to see it. I mean, no, we didn't. Not that we didn't get to see it. No, it's just, wait, hold on. Oh, no, wait, I'm wrong. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, no, never mind. I'm dumb. Oh, wait, so it's 3 teams of 6 and 1 team of 4. Oh, okay. Why? I mean, I still don't know why, but, like, that's, I guess, interesting. I mean, we would have been able to properly understand this more in a team forming, but, of course, teams aren't formed. Teams are just made. But yeah, that's the show. Overall, it's pretty alright. It's kind of struggling with how to pace itself, how to set itself a reasonable value. You can tell by the fact that this episode, it doesn't actually, like, there's no reason for this episode to be an A and B, right? You can notice that the A and B split is not planned at all. We were just making the episode, and then we were like, all right, I'm done. Time to upload, right? And then I was like, okay, I guess that's it. No more to say, I guess, right? So it's kind of like, bruh. I would have probably just, recommended making episode 2 fully, but hey, I don't know. Maybe if it was going super bad, then we can have this marker point here of, like, yo, teams are made now, next scene's gonna be the challenge, and it's like, it's understandable, but, like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. It needs to pace itself. I still believe that it goes way too large of a cast. Unless the episodes go from being 2 minutes long to being like 8 or more, I don't think there's any chance that everybody is going to get screen time in an episode, which is unfortunate because people need screen time in episodes. Otherwise the character isn't the character, it's just an asset that's listed despite not doing anything, right? So yeah, the main recommendation is just try to find a way to use these characters. Try to find a way to make them unique. Do anything with them, otherwise they're not going to be interesting. That's all for BFIDK. The other show that we're going to be taking a look at is titled TSS by, if I'm not mistaken, The Stupid Trio? Right? Is that what they're called? Yes, it is. It released about a month ago. No idea what this is, but I think The Stupid Trio is, includes BFIDK on them, alongside a fella called Bluey and a fella called Nebs. So, alright then, let's go watch TSS 1. Yeah, it looks nice. Alright, so that is TSS 1 that I watched. So this is relatively interesting to actually compare to the show created by Plush-us, because, we end up having a little bit of a different situation. It does a couple of things better and it does a couple of things worse. I will say that in my opinion, audio in this show tends to be not great. The music feels a little bit like it's been recorded off like a speaker. Audio, voice actor quality isn't as balanced as it is, for example, in the other show. Even though the voice actors themselves pretty solid, but again, like I don't think it's quite as mixed, especially with the music as well. However, it does a couple of things much better. I think that the intro here, very solid intro. We have a prize. I mean, it's a little goofy, it's flip it clip, but like at the end of the day, we have a prize. The cast, I feel like, is relatively decent. The intro is very solid as well. I like of course, I mean, again, it's a little bit scuffed in the sense of like the way that it goes image, and that's about it. But like I understand the idea. I see the vision. Okay, I see the vision. It's a pretty solid vision. And like it makes sense. I really like how Heart's name is Tre, which is heart backwards. I didn't actually catch that, and then I caught that later, and I was like, oh yeah, because Tre just looks like trash. I just thought, wait, why are you trash? But no, you're your heart backwards because you speak in reverse, which is very smart. And then the challenge, for example, in this show ends up working itself relatively better than the other one. I mean, it's not amazing. It's kind of still a little bit weird. People just kind of slip off for no apparent reason. They just kind of keep it moving. But like it ends up that a couple of people end up jumping over, flying over. Yeah, Heart gets kicked out. Heart the paper drops in. Bitcoin falls out, right? And then we end up having ourselves the 5 first people who fell off, which were Whiteboard, Heart, or Tre, Hairbrush, Pokeball, and Bitcoin. Who would I eliminate? You know what? I mean, I think the intro would suggest that Hairbrush should get eliminated because they have the most ominous intro section, which kind of implies that it's a little bit, oh, this character might have something, and they also feel like a little bit more of like the mean one, quote unquote. So I think that would make sense. Maybe Bitcoin as well. If people just don't like Bitcoin, I don't know. Do people like Bitcoin nowadays? I feel like people don't like Bitcoin nowadays. I feel right. I think people don't. I can't exactly tell you, but I think on average people don't really. But like yeah, in general, it's interesting. Overall, pretty interesting show. It is kind of funny to have self-inserts as the host. Like, it's literally Nebs and Plush-us, the people with their object shows. He's like that. Like, this is them hosting. It's not masqueraded at all, which is kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a debatable decision. Should you do that? Should you not do that? Does it make you look a little goofy to self-insert yourself as the host? Yes, it absolutely does. I'm not gonna lie. But hey, you know what? It's okay. I think if audio gets sorted itself out a little bit better, and make voices louder, music quieter, and actually fetch the music out as a file and not as a recording, then I think it's gonna end up quite a bit better. But overall, yeah, that is all for TSS. Next thing. Alright, next up I'm going to be skipping the queue a little bit. So why am I going to be skipping the queue? Simply because it's late and I need something quick to take a look at, right, when the next batch of requests after this would all have been long. And unfortunately, I didn't have fucking time to do. But today we are going to be taking a look at another relatively quick thing. Actually, it's got 5 episodes, but it's still relatively fast. ImanimationMLY is a fellow creator with 20 subscribers who apparently, after seeing Battle for Rafflesia, the Malaysian object show, has wanted to make their own little Malaysian little object show. So I guess let's keep a track. They've also recommended me their friends well, I don't know, their friends show. I don't know if it's also Malaysia, if it's for somewhere else, but we're gonna watch it in Animations first. So their show is titled Fight to Life from Random Malaysian Character, or FTLF RMC. Let's watch the episode, starting from episode 1, titled oh god, oh no, it's so over, bro. It's titled Perkenalan. Okay, so I'm going to preface the entirety of this FTLFRMC set of reviews by chatting about the factoid that it is very difficult to review a show made in another language. It is made easier by the situation of subtitles, because usually they tend to be captioned either in their own language and then it's translated to English, or then it's captioned directly into English by somebody, right? Which makes it a lot easier to catch. Because, for example, in something like this, it's way more complicated. Why? Well, it's way more complicated because YouTube auto captions already struggle to catch a lot of audio, and in a lower quality show, in terms of like audio quality, right, microphone quality, it's not going to be able to pick up everything. It's going to pick up everything kind of scuffed, and then the translation on top of that is going to make it very difficult to judge, okay? So that's just what I'm going to say. Episode 1, we end up having a couple of fellas drop in. We get to see characters, of which a lot of them have relatively interesting designs. We see like a typhoon. We see the emoji fella, so I think it's pretty interesting. We have the crazy like guy, boss office worker who seems to be kind of host powers. Either way, they got a lot of powers. We have some interesting like stacked on the like this that one food where like, you know, it's got the meat on the freaking stick. I don't remember what it's called. We got hanger. We've got ourselves a job application that gets turned into SpongeBob by the other fella because they were weird, right? And then the episode kind of just ends at random after this guy shows off their powers. So we're getting really like very small tidbits of information per time. Like it is not a lot, but all right then, sure. Let's go to episode 2, which is titled Penembak. Alright, that is episode 2, and you see, this is where the problems arise in terms of the auto captions for you. So you see, the captions think that the video is English when it's not, which means that it actually doesn't catch any of the words being said because they're not English words. So I actually have no idea what anything that is said in this video is. However, let's try to piece it together, shall we? So, our host ends up teleporting a couple of new characters in, a popcorn bucket and another bucket. It looks like a rice dish. However, they cannot pay for the food, so they eventually get teleported away alongside the lightning, who also, I guess, bothered them in the last episode, if I'm not mistaken. And when we have ourselves a challenge, which is a shooting range, shoot somebody, it's kind of like laser tag, shoot somebody and they're out, and they'll go to the cage. The fellas does that. A couple of fellas get some shots and a number appears over the head. Hanger's apparently super strong that they can reflect it. What? That's gotta be cheating. So they get the kill, the job application gets shot, and then that means that those three end up winning, and then the episode kind of just ends. There's not like a voting screen, there's not too much going on. I'm not exactly sure what is like is this a competition? What is the functionality of the show? I don't exactly know. I'm not quite catching it yet, but I mean, I guess we'll find out at some point. But yeah, I mean, I'm presuming that this guy who flies around has a tie. I'm presuming that is Malaysian character from the title of the show. Episode 3, Perbincangan. Okay, so you see yet again here the YouTube auto subtitles fucks up. It thinks that it's in Indonesian rather than Malaysian, which means that like I think those two languages are similar. However, that means that I can like certain sentences get catched, but others don't at all, and others make genuinely no sense. So yet again, it's not reliable. But I'm not gonna lie, we end up having a forced cameo here from Rafesios Aleph here, which or Olive, which ends up showing up a couple of times for a meme. They end up apparently getting teleported from the house over to a danger like zone factory, kind of looks like Gopo's underground factory, and a traffic cone, a very evil traffic cone, comes in to I think freaking teleports the hangar away over to Olive, and then a couple of people do pretty decently and manage to get by. I'm not gonna lie, for my way of looking at it right now, this really isn't looking like a competition show. It's looking like a kind of a slice of life show in a way. It's looking like one of those shows where it's like, oh, it's not really a competition, not really happening, but the characters get into a wacky, dangerous circumstance every episode, and then we get to see them leave in a minute, right? But yeah, so far in the technical aspects, I think the voice acting is currently looking pretty solid. Of course, I can't hear what they're saying, but it's feeling pretty solid. Animation is pretty well animated, at least. Again, I don't know what exactly they're supposed to be doing. However, like, I understand, I think I understand the vague idea, but, you know. Episode 4-1A. You can just write 4A, but okay. God. Siapakah, Imposter. Ain't no way I just got cliffhangered by a Malaysian object show. So, we end up, okay, so Among Us, right? You know Among Us, the hit video game that people played and still play? Well, that is the challenge, or the game, or the say. Do they do challenges? I don't know what they do. But either way, we play Among Us. So, or I guess legally distinct. Who is the imposter? And they end up doing that. And overall, you know what I'm gonna say? I like this. I like how this is portrayed, right? We get to see a couple of little segments. It's like we're spectating. We get to see this guy. We get to see a couple of different POVs at different times, and then from what the POVs are doing, we can form our own perception of who the imposter is, because we don't get to necessarily know beforehand as well. So we get to still see potential ideas, while also not, right? Which I think makes for a relatively interesting situation. I think again the art style, in my opinion, for the flipper clip is pretty solid. It's a pretty nice flipper clip. And then everything is pretty solid. We don't know who it is. It wasn't the evil guy. We got to see some names for the first time because, of course, they appear on the screen. Head. Okay, that's the fella's name. That's who I thought was Malaysian character. But yeah, we don't get to find out who it is because we get to a cliffhanger in episodes 4-1A, which means, well, it's time to find out who the hell the imposter is in episodes 4-1B. You can just write 4B. I'm telling you, it's titled Imposter in Disguise. Alright, so that is episode 1B. We get to find out the answer to the biggest debate that there ever was. Who was the imposter? Well, it was the white shape fella with 3 spiky lines that I don't know the name of. Oh my god. So that makes sense. I mean, as far from what I realized from the first episode, they did seem like one of the more deranged characters. At least, I think they were the one who was shooting the most people like in the shooting range or something. In a episode, they were weird. But yeah, the other fellas to get fooled and think that it was emoji guy because apparently shapeshifter. There was a shapeshifter. It wasn't just an imposter, which means that the shapeshifter managed to and slice up everybody else, which means that they won and everybody else lost. I don't know what that means. Like I don't know how this season. I'm not sure how the season works. To be 100% honest, but we get some fake adverts, and then the fella who the quote unquote deranged fella who I just said was the imposter that won, and just staying straight at the camera and tells me to be like, I had something I have to tell you. I have to leave this story for a while because I have to go to the dorm. No idea what that means, but look, I could not tell you if this is a for real thing. I think it's for real. I don't think this is like the character speaking to me. I think this is a creator speaking to me. I think, because otherwise it feels very off place. But yeah, that is Fight to Live from a random Malaysian character. It's relatively, it's cool. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty cool. It's kind of impossible for me to, again, realistically judge it 100% because I don't speak Malay. However, from what I saw in the other aspects, I think that voice acting was all nearly pretty solid. I think that I don't know, like, I don't know what the concept for the show is. I don't know how this functions. However, the fact that I don't know how this functions, I think gives me a good sign that it might function in a unique way. So I hope that it is, because it doesn't seem like just a raw elimination, because there's no voting, there's none of that stuff. Episodes are ending quickly. It's kind of different, right? And then it also does it does pretty solid. Like, it manages to pace itself relatively quickly. You know, it manages to get roughly minutely episodes every couple of days. Again, I would combine them personally. I don't think it's necessarily needed to have them be two different releases, like how episodes 4 and 4B ended up being different. Like, that's not really necessary. However, you know, if that's what we're gonna do, that's what we can do. Yeah. So yeah. And alright then, let's just jump straight into the other request from this very person. They recommended us another show that apparently seems to be their inspiration, and is even mentioned in this video. F.U.C. F.U.C is created by International Purple Phones, or F.U.C.Nationals. I have no idea what this is. I don't even know. I think it's in a different language, but I don't know. It's called Watch Out for the Stealer of Stick. Go. Alright, so I just watch F.U.C. First of all, one thing that I want to say, this art style is cool. I actually like this art style quite a bit. I'm not gonna lie, it's quite a bit different than what I've seen. And the way that the assets are made, and just kind of the way the characters look, it's a little bit different. Like, the strawberry looks very cool. The host looks very cool. I saw the kind of, like, blush effect that was used from time to time, and that looked cool. And then even a couple of other characters, like, there's some cool stuff. It's kind of, the limbs are a little bit rough. Sometimes it's the animation, it's a little bit slower than I'd reasonably expect. However, on average, like, it's a nice art style that I think is unique and separates itself from a lot of other things. And then the show itself. So, this show is in English, actually, for a majority of it. It is created by what apparently seems to be an Indonesian here, which means that we end up having ourselves this interesting thing. Now, of course, I'm never going to diss somebody for not perfect English when we're doing bilingual, right? For me to, like, fun fact, I am not a native English speaker. I don't know if you can tell. However, I am not. I speak Italian primarily. I also speak a bit of Portuguese. However, English was not one of my native languages. I entirely picked it up through using the internet and all of that other stuff, right? Which means that I know what it's like to be absolutely terrible at a language, right? And slowly work way up into understanding vocabulary and how the general sentence structuring works. So that means that, like, there once was a time where I kind of spoke in the way that this show spoke, right? And I can directly remember that era. So in a way, I kind of relate to the way that this show ends up being. You can see how, like, there's those, you can understand everything that is trying to be said pretty much all the time. However, it's just that, like, without the proper rules understanding that you just kind of need to know, it's not quite there, right? And it ends up unfortunately alienating probably a little bit of viewers that just kind of want to watch a show without thinking too much about it, because, like, every sentence is like, I see what we were trying to say, but it's not quite right. So in my personal opinion of it, okay, it's that object shows are a big community. There's going to be people all around who's probably going to be interested in watching a show with their language if you can get the sense of community around it, in the same way that, for example, Battle for Rafflesia manages to do it for the Malaysian audiences, right? Because it builds up a sense of community around this is our thing. And then that means that you can do that for Indonesian as well. Like, it is very possible that we can have an Indonesian show and it can be cool, right? For the Indonesian audience, while then eventually getting translated into English for those other people, right? I personally believe that this show, as far as the immediate health of the show, would be better off, I think, if it was Indonesian with English captions than it being English and then it's kind of rough English, which means that if you are if you only speak Indonesian, you're not going to be able to understand the show because it's in English, and if you speak English, you're gonna kind of think that the show's a little rough because the English isn't that good, right? Like, fully respectfully, you know, like I understand. It's just kind of, I think that this show would benefit from probably just like bailing from the English and just going in its native tongue, because at least it can appeal to that audience, and it's going to become much more unique because there just aren't as many shows in Indonesian as there are shows in English, right? So it's directly more interesting. However, at the end of the day, it's kind of, do what you want to do thing. If you want to make the show as well to practice English ability, to get better at English and all that stuff, then yeah, makes perfect sense to, you know, make it with English and then rough English and then slowly improve it from there, right? Again, it's what I did, even though I was horrendous at English originally by just making a lot of videos with it, and then kind of refining, talking a lot, despite with the rough English, and slowly picking up the rules, I got better. However, you know, it's kind of like the debate. I think that this show, within the immediate short-term future, would benefit from, in my opinion, just sticking to its native tongue and just speaking in the language that it wants to be in, right? Because I can feel it. I think this show should be in Indonesian. I think that this show should be in its native language. I don't think this show should be English. I think the show, being in English, it's forcing itself to be English when it would be able to speak so much more naturally and flow so much more naturally and just be more natural if it was in its language. So then you do that, plus a little bit of audio mixing improvement, right, by lowering it a little bit, right, lowering the music a little bit, getting the voices up yet again, like the music doesn't need to be that loud, right, and then you're gonna have a show with a unique art style for a unique language with unique possibilities. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good possibility. I would do that personally, absolutely. That is my opinion. If you're curious about the series, so a host called Flip Phone ends up having themselves a bunch of contestants, which they end up finding for the show called FCU. They end up having the pretty much 1A, right? Because they end up picking team captains by doing the challenge. Find a stick. Like the 2 specific sticks. Even though there's trees and you could ram out a branch and make it a stick, no. You have to find the 2 specific sticks to be decanted. Gold medal finds it pretty much immediately. Great answer for gold medal, by the way. And then nobody else ends up finding it for 6 hours. Pretty much everybody just gives up and goes, okay, I'm not going to be team leader, right? Till eventually, right at the end, after Soccer Ball gets scared, they manage to find the last one. It gets stolen by Cloudy, and they end up having a massive chase and debate until eventually this, I think, different language-speaking star ends up giving the stick over to them, and then they give it back for the name of Justice. So they end up getting it back to the hotel, which, by the way, yet again, great looking hotel, and they serve it in, meaning that they are the team captains and form the 2 teams for the next episode, and then they just kind of get to hang out at the hotel. But like, yeah, overall, it's a pretty interesting narrative. We're setting up a lot of locations, which I think is nice. We're setting up the hotel, we're setting up the grasslands, we're setting up all of this stuff, right? We're setting up characters, setting up kind of like the leading character, some interaction with the Cloudy being kind of the meaner character, the host not taking any bullshit. We have the Starfella that's not a contestant but comes coming from above to kind of mandate the law, right? We have the gold medal who's kind of super scared of challengers. We have the little ball who's a little bit more of a troller, right? Like, we are starting to understand things. We are starting to do things. I just think the show, honestly, the show is handicapped from not having that good English capability. And look, I think that it's better in its native tongue or with a proofreader. Technically, you can also proofread it if you have English-speaking friends. However, yeah, that's all. That's like the one tip I want to say for the show. I think that this show has got potential. I just think it needs to hone in on the audience that can make it great. And I think the audience that can make it great is the local audience. Go for the local audience. That's all. Let's do an outro. Alright, and that will be all for today's episode of Object Catch-Up. I low-key wanted to do more, but hey, the day dictates what the day dictates. I've been taking a look at a lot of requests lately to even try to keep up. I've roughly kept up with a lot of them. There is quite a bit more, but they're kind of from like the last week rather than these, which I took a look at, which the older ones were over 2 weeks old, right? So we kind of minimize the damage. I've got a bit of time to work with, therefore in the next few days I'm probably going to take a look at those, keeping up with the main new releases that we have to take a look at, which there are some big ones that we need to take a look at. You know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we'll roughly be going on around then. But for now, that is all for today's video. We just took a look at requests. We did a bunch of stuff. I couldn't quite take a look at exactly everything that I wanted. However, you know, unfortunate. But we develop for the shows that we watched today. We are all caught up. See you next time. Goodbye.